All right, joining us now from Vermont is former Marine and anti-war activist Liam Madden, who had one of the most remarkable and stunning victories in a primary over the past week, winning, shockingly, the Republican nomination to the U.S. House in the state of Vermont. Liam, welcome to Rising.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And so I wanted to start off by playing a clip from one of your debates. I saw in one of your videos, you said directly to Republican voters, you said, look, to be clear, I am not a Republican, but I am running in a Republican primary because I want to win. I want to win. I want to win the general election, and this is the path to do this. But you ran on a pretty unapologetic, I don't know if you would call it progressive or populist, or you can define it. But I want to play this clip from the debate to give people a sense of what the Republican primary looked like. Let's roll that.
But I also want to put it in the context that sees it as a response to the United States' belligerent foreign policy that is driven by a war machine that has its grip on our government. Closing the airspace, which Anya recommended, but not wanting to provoke nuclear war are completely contradictory statements. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot shoot down Russian planes and not expect that to escalate to a nuclear war. I think that is the most reckless, belligerent, and naive way to approach foreign policy with a nuclear power, to kick an opponent while he's down and down and down. This is a long-held strategy of the United States to use other countries' innocent people as pawns and proxies to weaken rivals throughout the globe. And I think that is immoral. And I wish the United States had a moral leg to stand on by opposing aggressive wars of intervention.
Thank you.
All right, so Liam, you ran as not just an anti-war candidate, but supportive of clean energy, of clean elections, public financing of elections, of universal health care. So how do you think that you managed to make it through the Republican primary with this platform?
I think there's a deep hunger in Vermont and throughout the country for an alternative to the two-party system, a recognition that we can be doing so much better than what we have, that Donald Trump and Joe Biden being the two choices before Americans is a testament to how dysfunctional and corrupt and warlike, divisive, inept our current political process is. And if someone is substantively talking about how we can work better together and not just saying we need to put in a new face in Washington, but here are some structural and cultural and technological ways that will help us bring free, open, democratic processes into the 21st century, people are really receptive to that.
Liam, I'm on the right, and honestly, a lot of what you said about Ukraine in particular, between the airspace and preventing nuclear war, I think is exactly how Republican candidates should be talking about Ukraine. And I wonder if over the course of your run, even though you openly said, I am not a Republican, I'm doing this to win, you found yourself attracting or interesting any Republican voters just in interesting numbers or significant numbers as you sort of talked about these issues.
I don't think I could have won the Republican primary without talking about a lot of shared values with Republicans. And I think it's a misconception to think that there's a lot of appetite for the foreign policy momentum we've had over the last several decades among the Republican Party. I think there's a lot of shared values that often, that the point of your show, I think, is to highlight some of the shared values and the ways that open dialogue is important, and it will reveal that there's actually much more in common populist movement than the mainstream media would have us believe.
Absolutely.
And so after I kind of highlighted your win, some people on Twitter started circulating some screenshots from, I think, your campaign website that suggested some kind of dalliance with maybe 9/11 trutherism or something. Can you respond a little bit to that? What was that level of criticism about?
I have probably 10 times the amount of content on my website as any of my competitors, basically giving people the opportunity to know exactly what they're getting, what I stand for on various issues. And I do have a section called Have a Laugh, where I go into a lot of things. I say we need to sterilize and kill illegal aliens, and then it's obviously a joke about like extraterrestrial aliens. And the point about 9/11 is that I think conspiracy theories can't be entirely dismissed because it shuts out conversation where there are truly conspiracies in some areas. However, it doesn't negate the fact that massive incentive structures are really the things that we should indisputably believe are what's causing anything that we don't like in this world for the most part, is probably more to do with perverse incentives around profit motive and re-election and those sorts of things. So it's more of an outreach to say, I don't dismiss conspiracies as out of hand. And I think having it improves our ability to see the world more holistically when you can have open conversation about it.
I've talked to a lot of veterans, particularly on these issues over the years, and I wonder how much your experience in the military informs what a lot of people, especially a lot of people on the right in years past, would have dismissed as unpatriotic or dismissed it as, just basically like the Chomsky wing of the Democratic Party. But as somebody who's actually served your country, how did that inform your perspective on the way we use our very powerful and extremely well-funded military?
It's absolutely formative to me to awaken politically in the world, where I could see firsthand that the way we were abusing this beautiful intention of how, on behalf of millions of Americans who are willing to risk their life to serve noble ideals, gets completely dragged through the mud and betrayed by a political class that uses it for naked power and profit and needs to lie in order to justify using and misusing the real honorable intentions of people who join the military. I don't think that's I think it's a remarkably good thing that the Republican Party and right-leaning people have been able to, over the last decade in particular, have the nuance of mind to understand that there's a far cry between being anti-patriotic and being deeply skeptical of the war machine.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. The Republican Party in Vermont has a couple of different ways that they can respond to this. They can say, all right, this guy beat us fair and square in our own primary. Clearly, what he's saying resonates perhaps with the broad general public, but clearly resonates even with our own voters because he was able to beat us at our own game. And so therefore, we're going to rally behind his agenda and make this maybe our only chance to actually win a statewide federal seat. Now, Republicans, obviously, as you know, do very well at the statewide level for state seats. Governor Phil Scott, extremely popular as a Republican here. Or the Republicans can say, well, this guy clowned us in our primary. We're just going to walk away from this, and we're furious about this, and we're going to figure out ways to write rules that this will never happen again. So, what kind of reaction have you been getting from, what exists as a Republican establishment in Vermont?
Well, there's the voices of my competitors who I beat, who are crying foul and thinking I'm dishonest about what I've intended to do, and then there's the most of who I've heard from are people that say, please do not decline the nomination for the Republican Party. And what I don't know what to expect from response, but I'm having a meeting with the Republican Leadership Committee tomorrow, and I've written a letter to them basically expressing what I want, which is I want to have civil, respectful, open dialogue with you, and I would like the Republican Party's leadership to basically politely stay neutral about my campaign. I think I can be good for the Republican Party, and we do share values.
Absolutely.
So have you decided whether you're going to accept the nomination yet? And what would be the consequences of declining it? Because that's what Sanders does, right? He declines it, but he does it in partnership with the Democratic Party. So they promise not to screw him by putting another candidate in its place. So you would kind of need a handshake agreement, right, with the Republican Party if you were going to decline the nomination.
That is exactly right. I went into this first-time candidate thinking that, well, Bernie Sanders runs and declines the nomination, and then he's an independent in the primary. What I didn't realize was that there needed to be a pre-agreement with the party ahead of time so that they don't just fill that spot that I vacate with another candidate who I just beat. So given that I didn't I didn't know that. I didn't understand that fully. I really have no choice but to accept the Republican Party's nomination. And I'm an independent running with an R behind my name. And I don't think that's going to be too hard of a problem because I convinced enough Republican voters to select me as their nominee. But also, this is, as you pointed out, a state with an incredibly open mind where the same person can vote for a Republican voter and a Bernie Sanders, Republican governor and a Bernie Sanders. So it's an open primary. It's going to be very interesting, and we'll see how it turns out.
Gotta love Vermont.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Liam, for coming on the show. We're really excited to talk to you and appreciate your time.
Thank you guys so much. Take care.
Of course. We'll be back with more Rising after this.